We're out camping today, and thought since we've got some spare time, we'd do a few gear reviews. One thing we're going to talk about is this Spec Plus Marine Raider Bowie knife by the Ontario Knife Company. It's a knife we've been using for a few years. We both own one. It's a real workhorse for us out here. Anyway, there's a few things to talk about with this knife. For starters, it's a pretty decent sized knife. I think the blade is 10 inches.
I think it's 9 and something.
Yeah, close to 10 inches. It's a Bowie knife, obviously. It is 1095 steel, I think, which is a high carbon steel. The high carbon steels tend to be more brittle, but they're harder. So it should maintain its edge pretty well, provided you don't chip it. The good thing about this knife is that you're very unlikely to chip it. It's hard to tell probably from where you are there, but this is a full tang knife, and it's a 1/4 inch of steel from the tang, end of the tang, up to where it starts to, up to the clip point where it drops down. So it maintains the full 1/4 inch thickness up to here, which makes it a pretty hefty knife. I don't know how good it would be in a knife fight. You would have plenty of reach with it, and Lord knows if you ever hit someone, you'd do a number on them. However, it's pretty sluggish in the hands because it is such a heavy knife. I forget what the weight of it is. I want to say close to 2 pounds.
We can post all that out.
Yeah, we'll post the specs afterwards. It maintains its thickness as well, pretty well to the edge of the blade. It's a flat grind here, from the midpoint down to the cutting edge. The knife has an excellent belly, so it starts, narrow here and rounds out nicely, which is what you'd like to see in a chopping knife, skinning knife, or pretty much any knife for that matter. It has a pretty strong tip here. We've dug into things with it. You can gouge bits of wood out without really bending the tip. I have slightly bent the tip on mine, but that was really knife abuse. We don't baby these at all. It has a powder coating because the high carbon steels are also prone to rust. So it has this powder coating on it to protect the blade from rust. That having been said, probably still a good idea to dry it and oil it. The knife comes with a terrible factory edge. You can see the sliver, the tiniest sliver of steel showing through the powder coat where the final knife edge has been sharpened. And it's quite dull from the factory. Now, that having been said, neither one of us has sharpened it, and the primary task for us with these knives is splitting firewood, and it is quite excellent at doing that. The only thing that would make it any better, perhaps, is if it didn't have a false edge along the top of the clip point, I think it's called. It's not a bad chopper and would be an excellent chopper if you perhaps reprofiled it or even just sharpened it a little better. We can demonstrate a few chops probably. Now keep in mind this is the factory edge, so It's not going to have much of a bite. As you can see, it's, I mean, you get the idea. If you sharpen this knife, you can definitely chop down trees with it. Obviously not the ideal tool for the job, but it can be done. But splitting wood is really where this knife excels. And I'm going to actually grab a baton and give you a quick demonstration. I don't know if my baton is heavy enough for the piece of wood I'm working on here. This is dry aged maple that we found. It's pretty hard. We zipped it up with the chainsaw and split it with an axe, but we do our finer cutting with the knife. So we'll do a quick baton through. So that was effortless. And of course it's where it beats out things like an axe and other tools is on the finer stuff. So if I want to split this small piece in half again, and sure, we'll cut it again. As long as you steer clear of knots and try to find relatively straight grain, then it's quite effortless and safe. That's the good thing about it. You know, when I'm batoning here, I'm never in danger of hurting myself, unlike when I'm swinging an axe around, which can always be tricky. I mean, there are steps you can take to ensure that you're using an axe safely and so forth, but you're still swinging the axe. If you had a hatchet, I suppose you could baton with that as well. My axe is hand forged, and it's made for a very specific purpose, and was not really designed for you to hammer on the pole. In fact, it specifically says not to do so, which is why I don't do it. Anyway, probably not a big deal if I was hammering, if I was just batoning with wood, but you wouldn't want to try it with metal on metal. You probably wouldn't want to do that with this knife either, even though it would probably stand up to it. The problem with a high carbon steel like this, being brittle, metal on metal, theoretically you could shatter it. Again, probably not going to happen unless you're really abusing it. But then metal on metal hammering with this knife is probably knife abuse. There is a bit of shock that comes through when you're batoning wood, so having a pair of work gloves is good. With the work gloves on, I honestly don't feel a thing really when I'm batoning. So the handle does a reasonably good job of absorbing shock. One thing I did notice is that, can't remember the term, we'll post it later. The guard here, which is not the name for it, I don't think. Next to the choil, this came loose a little bit because we had taken a huge log, again, aged dry maple, and we're pounding on the knife to baton it through another huge log when we were winter camping, and we just hit it too many times and we weren't being precise with our, you want to hit away from the guard obviously. When you're batoning, the sweet spot, and chopping for that matter, the sweet spot is just around here. That's where you get your chopping and splitting power. The weight is balanced forward, so yeah, anyway. As a weapon, yeah, sluggish in the hands because of its weight, and also the weight is fairly forward on this knife. If I were to balance it, it's not too bad. but it is still forward heavy. I think it's counterbalanced a little bit, but it's not something you can really wave around in your hands quickly. So as a weapon, it falls short, I think, on that, in that area. So the sheath that it comes with is not the greatest, but it's actually not too bad. It's leather on one side. I don't know if it's Cordura or nylon or, yeah, on the other side, which is kind of like a really super heavy duty nylon almost, I guess. Some sort of synthetic. Anyway, it's reasonably stiff. The knife goes in and out without too much trouble. A couple things I don't like: rivets around where the edge are. My concern is that moisture gets in there. Moisture, metals, I don't know if it's the same, probably not the same type of metal that this is, which again could encourage corrosion. I don't see any drainage holes, so if water gets in there, it's probably going to get soaked up by the sheath. However, you're going to have water up against your knife edge, which again is susceptible to corrosion. That having been said, the fit of the sheath is pretty good. You have a number of clips here. So you have one clip that goes across the top, and another that hooks around hilt. Can't believe I forget my knife anatomy. Anyway, that keeps it in there pretty snugly. You can't draw the knife without releasing that, and probably not, and not without releasing this one as well. So you have to release 2 snaps in order to draw the knife. It's got a loop here that you can put on a belt, and another spot for a lanyard on the end. What I tend to do is put this through a belt and use this to keep the knife from flopping around. I tie it around my leg, and it actually holds the knife pretty well, and keeps it ready for use, for quick use.